Many people ask how to tell the refined mind from the unrefined mind. So I decided to speak about it a bit today. First of all, unrefined mind is fanatical mind, the mind that runs into extremes, the mind that imagines, projects, the mind that constantly lives, relives its past. It's the mind that does not know the present moment, the mind that does not understand the time because it has not perceived it within the self. So the unrefined mind is the mind that constantly projects its illusion, impressions, ideas, and the mind that does not understand its existence through various bodies. So, for instance, most of the people think that this is their only life at this point. And whatever they learn through this life, they try to apply it and they think that this is life. Yet, they have certain urges, certain impulses within themselves that sprout out throughout their lives. But they don't see, in a way, where they come from. They're not aware. So their awareness is not penetrating into such layers of their conscious being. So the mind or consciousness is in bondage of their own projections and subconscious so far programs. Subconscious means that it is still a part of their consciousness, but they are not aware of them in this particular body. So unrefined mind is going to wander, is going to create continuously. Even when that mind turns within and perceives stillness for a moment, or when that mind gets absorbed for a moment, it's not enough for it to break through the bondage of self-created illusions, concepts, ideas. Sometimes when people access something within themselves or turn within and realize something, they still remain unrefined. So the danger of unrefined mind is that it still creates and creates and creates. So after the awakening, the mind still remains unrefined. And the point of the awakening is to in a way, to push the aspirant to the path of refinement, where the consciousness is able to observe its own multidimensional being, meaning consciousness observes its embodied existence with all the emotions, thoughts, and this consciousness has also realized its own essence because the mind turned within. The mind that turns within is the awakened mind. But yet that mind now is able to consciously witness what is not a part of its pure essence. So this process, or the process of actually transformation or refinement, is, in other words, the process of cultivation of power by stillness or through stillness and observation. Observation means that one observes all that disturbs one's space of being. So the master is still, or is able to remain in stillness for long. Master's mind is able to be anything, yet stillness is what predominates. The unrefined mind, and still, even if, for instance, still if masters come out of the stillness and perform certain tasks, they're able to get back to stillness. Their mind does not cling. More or less refined mind does not cling. Or even if it observes some tendency of clinging or reinforcing certain impression in the mind, it is able to consciously let it go. The unrefined mind is not able to let go because the thought and emotion hunts it. So, as long as the mind does not perceive the stillness of its own space of being, it can always get tangled. And that's why this process is called refinement, because on this path of self-refinement, through this process, we experience different type of events, people, situations. And if you're an awakened being, it doesn't mean you won't be experiencing these things. It means you will, even more so, more intensely, because all that stuff which is within you in the form of concepts, ideas, impressions will start coming out and showing itself so that you can reflect and see, evolve, learn. That's why sometimes it becomes intense, because there is a lot of baggage there. Unrefined mind will perceive reality or divide reality onto black and white. It will go into extremes. If the mind realizes it sees that there's no point in going to extremes, because going to extremes means creating suffering and attachment and clinging to this reality. It also means draining the body. It also means ignorance. So the refined mind will simply experience through stillness, and every moment will be let go. The unrefined mind is not able to let go of every moment. It builds in the mind these moments as a sequence of moments and sees it as a timeline. Such mind drains itself and ages. The mind that is living in the present moment is free from the past. But it doesn't mean that such mind can never tangle anymore in the experience. Such mind may choose to be a part of a certain experience. And there is always a slight possibility to get tangled, at least for a while, but by choice. The refined mind perceives itself as the one who is responsible for own being, and that mind makes choices. It will never be fanatical. It will never be defending anything, because it sees that everything is the outcome of the collective choice, even if this collective choice is determined by many embodied beings, as if separate but yet still connected. So the refining mind, the mind which is on the process of refinement, will start seeing these points. It will start perceiving reality. in a more neutral, equanimous way. You cannot practice this science of refinement. You can become refinement yourself. This is the path of purity. This is the path of selflessness. When unrefined minds experience something through drugs, through certain herbs, they set themselves off on this particular path. They become fanatical. They have a certain experience, but their consciousness is not naturally mature. And so they create all kinds of setups for themselves and get trapped on the path. The path of awakening is also the path of facing the bondage. But you can only face this bondage if you're enough mature to realize that it is a bondage. Otherwise, this bondage will start attaching you even more. So when we speak about Kundalini awakening, it's the path of realizing the bondage, the roots for the bondage, and it's very painful. Why it's painful? Because we see that most of our notions of life, ideas, are false. Whatever false path we've been creating within ourselves and following are useless for our true evolution. So we feel like we've wasted a lot of time. And yet, time is never wasted. Because time is the essence of the space and our natural being. So it can never be wasted. It's the limited, unrefined mind projects such a notion. It's the limited mind that perceives itself in a limited scope of time. That's why it drains its body in which it dwells and sees life in a very obscure mode or way. So the unrefined mind, after awakening, Kundalini awakening, feels that it got some access to creative potential within, but it is still unrefined. So this creative potential, this creative push, impetus within will start pushing all its unrefined stuff outwards. But because there is no maturity and understanding of the path, such beings get tangled. Instead of becoming more selfless, more mother-like, more simple in some way, and more still, these beings go into ultra creative mode, make a lot of fuss, and get more tangled in the matter. They age and die. When this takes place, it means that the essence of the path has not been absorbed and understood. Because the path should express itself as absolute stillness and absorption, as deep selflessness, and yet highly evolved intelligence. If these aren't there, if there is ambition, an inability to let go, if there is constant projection of single moment into perpetuity, if there is some kind of a imagination, hallucination of self, it means that the essence of the refinement and the path has not been understood. It means you are on the path of your own illusion, on the path of your own delusion. True yoga can only be understood through stillness. The word yoga means absorption into equanimity and stillness. That's the beginning of yoga, and that's the end of yoga. Once you get absorbed, you will realize the root that creates the movement within your space of self. If you aren't able to realize the impetus within that creates the movement, and you are not experiencing certain movements and postures involuntarily, it means you're on a path of self-delusion. There'll be no refinement. Maybe you'll be very successful in gymnastics and stretching your legs and twisting your body, but there is no yoga, there is no absorption, there is no equanimity. Truth is born through stillness and equanimity. Stillness is the key to immortality, to agelessness, to enlightenment of the subtle and the gross. Those who understand this step on this path within themselves, and instead of cultivating ambitions or feeding their imagination, they absorb into stillness and realize the beauty of letting go. Letting go in here doesn't mean that you have to abandon your life, escape or run away, because escapism and running away, fanaticism of any form, is the sign of unrefined mind, the mind which is not mature yet. The mature mind does not abandon anything. The mature mind dives into every aspect of self, but perceives it through conscious stillness, observes, realizes the waves of every phenomena, every element, every trigger. And such a being is fully responsible. Victimized being is a sign of unrefined being, unrefined mind. Consciousness, which is in bondage of victimization, is cancerous, and that's why such consciousness produces cancerous body. It drains the body, makes it age and decay and die in agony. But it is the death of the body. It is not the death of existence. We as existence have to become conscious about our life. We have to live in such a way that we experience everything to the depth. And when we choose to leave the body and this world, we have to do it consciously. That would be a graceful, blissful death. None of the majority of the people knows what is blissful, graceful life, nor what is graceful, blissful death. So this path of liberation is, first of all, liberation from self-created illusions, and only then understanding of the matter, understanding of the creation within the self through the self, understanding of the collective, and only then conscious exit from this reality. Without such knowledge, without such science, without such education, without such self-born knowledge and self-born internal practice, which is the result of inner spiritual maturity, one is not able to spiritually progress. No matter how beautiful your paths are described, how well marketed, how beautiful words, very mystical words are used. Self-born knowledge is self-protected. It will never sprout out in the vessel that is devoid of maturity and purity. Self-born knowledge can only be perceived in stillness and silence, which is a natural being. If the mind turns within and awakens, it perceives that first. Only then it can say that it's set on the path of awakening and refinement then afterwards. The paths of demagogy, voluntary exercises, gymnastics, all kinds of rituals are not the path to immortality. Neither they are truly spiritual paths. They are the path of spiritual illusion and spiritual hallucination. But everything comes in a right moment for each individually embodied being, and every experience is valid for every being. So even if it's an experience of illusion, it is all right, because that's the time for that particular being to experience that illusion. The most important is not to try to jump over one's head. It's impossible. Everything is right, and everything has its own cycle. That's why knowledge is always self-protected. It cannot be copied. It does not sprout out in a vessel which is devoid of purity. That's what everyone has to bear in mind.